Hi, and welcome to the I Teach Myself podcast. My name is Matthew Miniman, and this is episode 86. What can SimCity teach us about bloatware? So, SimCity. This is a game, if you haven't never played it, this is a game originally created in 1989, released by a company called Maxis. It is a city builder, which you could probably tell from the title, SimCity. Anyway, SimCity is a definite classic game. You are given a blank slate of a map, and you are essentially able to build a city on top of it. And it is your job to manage the city and make as much money as possible. You only fail the game when you decide to quit. That's really it. The game won't end no matter your negative balance. The game won't end no matter how positive your balance. It just doesn't stop. It will continue to go. And that is true throughout all of the major SimCity titles since the original. And so basically, the way it works is you have a blank map and you lay out your city as you want, and you have to make sure that you manage your resources appropriately to spend the proper amount of money and levy the right amount of taxes so that your city can thrive. And based on how you have your taxes set or whatever, you can attract or detract from certain types of business or whatever arriving in your city, such as commercial and industrial, etc., etc. Anyway, the whole point of SimCity is that you are a city manager. You get to build this bastard up from the ground up. And you also get to manage all of the money. And it's super easy to build everything. It's not like real life where you have to wait for something to get built. Nah, that fucking hospital, that gets built instantly. Yeah, you want a gas station over here? Oh man, that takes 3 days. It's a relatively simple way to pass some time. I definitely suggest checking it out if you like that sort of game, or, if you don't like that sort of game and you're somebody, hey, yeah, go fucking try it, you asshole. Anyway, the whole point, man, here being is that you have a city builder, and you have a city where you are attempting to make things as efficient as possible to reduce your need for funding and your need to pay for the upkeep on specific types of buildings or utilities or things like that. So everything in SimCity costs money. Everything. You lay a bunch of pipe down to give water service to your residents. That costs money. You're paying another city, a bordering city, to help fund your or to give you water or electricity. That all costs money. It costs money to maintain those things. It costs money to maintain your roads. So the more roads you have, the more you have to spend on roads, and so on and so forth. It can be a bear to manage, and it can also cost you a bunch of money and get you eventually into the negatives, because unless you reduce the amount of money you spend on those roads, unless you reduce your upkeep rate on those items, they will cost you money. And if you reduce the upkeep amount you put on those items, eventually they'll just wear out and expire, and you'll have to replace them. So there's a give and a take there. There is a large portion of the game which is tax management, upkeep management, things like that. So as the player, as the person building the city manager, you have to account for all of this. You either have to tax more or upkeep less, and it can really make your city kind of shitty, especially if you're trying to be really nice and have this really well-designed, really well-made city that you now all of a sudden can't do anything with because you're paying too much to build your roads or upkeep your roads or your power lines or your water. Man, there's a whole bunch of shit you got to do. Anyway, in SimCity, you control all of this via tax rates and upkeep rates. And the more you upkeep stuff, the better your citizens view the city. The less you have to replace, the less you have to pay attention to, because your stuff just stays up and running. Whereas, if you are if you upkeep it all and your citizens really enjoy the fact that all your stuff is brand new and shiny, but you're in the hole for $1 million, then you can't really build anything new, and it's a slow, tedious game. Yeah, so that's kind of how it works with SimCity. I might be oversimplifying it. I have no idea. It's been it's been a while since I've played the game, and I haven't played any of the latest versions, so there might be something different in them. I have no fucking clue. We're going from SimCity the original to like SimCity for 3000. So, excuse me if I haven't kept up in the whole fucking thing. Anyway, whole point being, don't undercut your point, Matthew. Keep going. Bloatware on your computer. If you don't know what bloatware is, you obviously have never purchased a computer before, or you've just been blissfully unaware of the entirety of how horrible your system is running. So bloatware is a concept that when you order or buy a new computer from a manufacturer, so you buy one from Dell or Acer or, I don't know, Lenovo, HP, any manufacturer, they install their own software alongside the operating system on your computer. And this is a little intentional for them. Like they want the most functionality for you, so they're obviously going to install all of the drivers and all of the optional software that goes along with those drivers, so that you can do things like, hey, I want to control the color of my buttons. I want to control the way my audio works. I want to control which of these plugs is the microphone and which of these plugs is the headphone, that sort of thing. And, all that custom built driver software will allow you to do that. But one of the other things that gets installed alongside these drivers is oftentimes those companies will get a small amount of capital from software vendors to install their software on your computer. Now, Microsoft does this by forcing them to install Microsoft 365 and all the Office tools onto a computer and feed you nothing but ads. But there are also other organizations that will give them money. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that is useful, but like Zynga will install a bunch of those shitty Facebook games. Gosh, I think Candy Crush is on every fucking computer I've ever touched since 2010. There's just a bunch of pre-installed shit on your computer, and some of it even has a malicious, or can be malicious on your computer. It's something that has definitely happened in the past. Lenovo was caught putting malware onto their factory images for all of their computers one year. I think that was 2013, 2014. Anyway, they were caught doing this, and it was a big deal. But yeah, so you'll get this bloatware installed on your system, and a lot of it is stuff that you'll never use. It's a lot of it's programs that you may never want to try or may never want to even fuck with. And this is stuff that can have a negative impact in the case of the Lenovo thing. So what does this mean for you guys? What does this mean for normal folk? Well, in a sense, it's software that can just have a huge negative impact on your machine. There were a lot of Acer products, a lot of Acer computers that came pre-installed with this particular audio software. I can't remember the name of it, but it would launch when you rebooted your machine, and it was built and installed in such a way that even if you removed it from your startup sequence, it would reload it the next time it was run. So if you accidentally clicked on it in your start menu or whatever, it would re-inject itself into your startup. And it was a bear. It was just a fucking bear of an audio program, and it would just slow down your boot up on your computer. And, way back when, it was spinning disks, this meant a lot. It would take, 5-10 minutes for your computer to fully load. and this software would slow it down. And, this isn't necessarily something that we have to worry about too much if you buy a modern computer with a solid state drive, because a lot of that stuff kind of gets tampered down by the fact that your computer is faster. But it's still out there. There are these applications, and these agreements still exist with these organizations, with these vendors. It just seems to matter less because now there's this faster operation with your computer. But all that being said, they still ship with this massive amount of bloatware with your computer, and it can have negative impacts in other ways other than just operating cycles and keeping your operating system slower. It can eat up your disk drive. There are some bloatwares that sit there and they'll just download random shit onto your computer, and eventually it'll just eat up your hard drive. It'll eat up your drive space, and so you no longer have any drive space to store your cat pictures with, or your illegitimately downloaded music. You have no idea what this stuff is doing, and it's just downloading bucket loads of data and storing it on your system. Another way that it can impact you is that it can affect how your computer operates in totality. In fact, there is a driver, an audio driver out there that has it's called push to talk. You guys probably already know what this is, but push to talk is the concept of I push a button and then I can speak through my mic. My mic will only work when I push this button, and it's a legitimate thing to do. However, the way that certain drivers have implemented it, it appears like it's a virus, because that's how a keylogger works. It looks at your key presses and tracks those. And so the way that this one particular company has been tracking the push-to-talk function for their mics is it looks illegitimate, and it can fuck with your computer, especially when you install an antivirus on your computer that isn't the standard McAfee bullshit that Lenovo tries to push on you. It can look like a virus, and it can scare you when you first scan your computer. You can be like, "Oh no, I've been infected this entire time." If you don't know any better, it can really freak you out. But yeah, that's just what it is. It's a driver that got installed that appears illegitimate because of its activity, because of its heuristics. Now, on the note of McAfee, that is another thing that a lot of companies will install alongside the operating system, are antivirus. And these are typically pretty fucking useless. I mean, McAfee has not been good really ever. It's been just a terrible fucking product. And I will say that just because I have yet to see a good product made by McAfee ever. I won't tell you what to buy, but I'll definitely tell you what not to buy. Don't fuck with McAfee. The dude who built it was a crazy person. And yeah, the product sucks, man. The product's just awful. And anything that's installed on your computer that's McAfee, and a lot of vendors will install McAfee products on your system, they can have a significant impact on your machine. They will send you notifications that you need to renew their subscription. It'll give you bogus scareware notifications telling you you're infected or may possibly be infected because you need to renew your service. It can interrupt the normal operations of your computer by servicing you illegitimate ads. I mean, this is an intrusive fucking program, and it is a virus in and of itself by the strictest terms. It's doing shit you don't want it to do. But there are other applications that do this as well, other EDRs that they will install alongside them, Panda, Avast, whatever. They will act just crazy on your system and fuck you up while you're using it, and try to convince you that your computer is under attack and is actively being exploited and all this other shit. And it's just a scare tactic. And I know, if you have no concept of what the software is doing or where it's going, you might be so scared, you might go buy a computer. Oh, and guess what? This doesn't happen on a Mac. Mac is better. Yeah. I'm solely convinced a lot of the reason why people think Mac is better is because Mac doesn't install this bullshit on their computer, or at least when they do, it's pretty lean. So, +1 to Mac for that, though I don't enjoy having to pay $1,000 for a monitor stand. Macs don't belong in an enterprise environment, by the way. I might go make an entire rant podcast just for that. Anyway, so how does this relate to fucking SimCity? Well, again, it's very similar with that. If you aren't managing your resources in SimCity properly, it can really fuck the game up. It can really fuck your map up. It really mess with your city. If you've got just gobs and gobs of roads and there's nothing in your tax revenue to replace or upkeep those roads, it can be a negative thing. It can impact your city negatively. And so you need to make sure that you don't have just an absolute smattering of roads that you're having to pay upkeep on. And you need to make sure that you have the bare bones. You don't want to build this great infrastructure in your city that is unwieldy just to then pay the taxes yourself and not have any way to have any incoming revenue. Because that is a mistake that a lot of players new to the game genre can make, is that, I'm going to make this perfect city and I'm going to put my power plant in a corner and I'm going to put my residential area in another corner of the map, and I'm going to put my commercial zones in another corner of the map, and then I'm going to put an industrial zone over here in the bottom right corner of the map, and yeah, this is going to be great, except, building roads and power lines and sewage lines to all that costs so much fucking overhead that is almost impossible for you to upkeep. And that's not to mention like hills and having to build around fucking lakes and shit like that, or rivers. And, there's just a shit ton of stuff that can go wrong. And, so you want to make sure you want to remove that. You want to remove all of that unnecessary space, and you want to try to make your system as efficient, or your city as efficient as possible. And so by virtue of buying a new system, one of the things I always suggest to anybody who buys a new computer, whether it's your IT department or whether it's you as a person, your personal computer or whatever, the first fucking thing you should do is format that bitch back to default. And not even factory default, because the factory default image obviously comes with a bunch of bloatware. No, install it with your own ISO of Windows. If you're buying a Windows machine, go and download the ISO, install it on a thumb drive. There's a media creator kit that you can download from Microsoft that will install a fresh blank install of Microsoft Windows, and it will give you the ability to have a completely clean computer. You can make sure that your computer is as clean as it can be. There's also a reset functionality inside of Windows, which will reset it to as close to a blank slate as Microsoft will allow in that instance. The best suggested method is to install it via the thumb drive. But if you can't do that, or you're not entirely sure how, definitely resetting the operating system back to a blank slate will help more than not. And, you can go through and uninstall all the bloatware yourself, but the fact remains is that it was installed on there originally, and there can be artifacts on there that can cause issues or errors and make it look like there's some other thing. Plus, I just don't fucking trust anything that I didn't install myself. So, I will reinstall Windows from the ground up 100% of the time. And, if you don't have this as an organization, if you are part of a larger organization and you don't have something that kind of states this off the bat, as far as how your procurement platform, you should make this part of your standard process and procedure. You will reimage every system you get to a base image that you very well understand. And there are ways to automate this. There are ways to automate this process so that if you are part of a large organization, that, you have 5, 6 laptops or 5, 6 computers that you have to deploy every week, there are ways to make this process quicker, easier, and automated. There's a process through Intune, it's called Autopilot, which will configure your computers appropriately. It will allow you to configure your computers to the way you want. There's also something called a WDS server, which will allow you to deploy images based on how you've created them. It can be a lot of work up front, but it can also save you just a shit ton of work on the back end. So there's a lot of different ways to skin this cat. And I definitely, as a security professional, as an IT person, suggest that you reformat your computer, that when you buy a new system, that you put your own install of the operating system on there, because otherwise you don't know what that person, you don't know what the factory put on there. You don't know where they put that power plant in relation to your business. They could put that power plant in the middle of your residential zone, causing your residential zones to be dying of pollution, causing a tremendous upkeep at the hospital, and your roads are being deteriorated because the tax rate on your roads was so low, and there's a tornado and a fucking earthquake, and oh my God, that's all I got time for today, guys. I hope you have a great day.